RL102 Basic Russian Grammar Part 1
Основы грамматики русского языка, часть 1.
with Victor D. Huliganov. Copyright www.huliganov.com 2007. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to lesson 3 of our course on basic Russian grammar. We're taking a slight break from grammar as such this lesson because I want to talk a little bit about Russian names. It's an important cultural aspect, and I think it's not a bad thing to deal with it fairly early on. And in lesson 4 we will get back to the adverbs and the verbs which are going to build up what we learned in the last lesson. So it's a slightly different lesson this time. I wanted to put it all together, but I've noticed that there's quite a lot of material about names in Russian, and so it ended up being too large to put together with other material as one lesson. Unfortunately, we are all the time, in order to do this course and do it on a YouTube format, we are always constrained with time. When you consider the question of names in Russian, you have to know that in addition to the formal version of the full name, you get also the diminutives, which is called имя ласкательное, the diminutives. Now, you'll only use a diminutive towards somebody that you're on good terms with, already definitely on ты with, as I explained in an earlier lesson. However, if you are not aware of them, you might get confused because some of them look like names of ladies when in fact they refer to gentlemen, because most of them are ending in a or ya, regardless of whether it is a man or a woman, whereas in the case of the full names they are usually ending in a consonant or a semivowel, the i kratkaya for men, but for in ladies in a or ya. Now just let me give you some examples of Russian names for boys and for girls, together with their diminutive versions coming from the various parts of the world in which the Russian names have come from. Russia, being a Christian civilization, obviously took names from the New Testament, and you have very popularly Ivan is John, with this short form Vanya. Piotr is Peter, also the name of Peter the Great. Piotr Veliki is the short form Petya. Pavel from the New Testament, Paul, is Pasha in the short form. For girls from the New Testament, Maria is obviously very commonly used, and the short form is Masha. However, there are many names in the New Testament which are not that commonly taken in Russian in comparison with, for example, other Slavonic countries which are Catholic. For example, Poland takes very many more names from the New Testament than Russian does. In Russia you will find Matthew, Matvey, Timofey, Yakov, which is James, but you don't find very many Marks or Martas in the way you do in Poland, but these names are really not that common. Certainly Old Testament names are much rarer. Ilya, the man's name, Elijah, is an example of an Old Testament name, and so is Daniel, but these are not so common. And certainly there are other Old Testament names, and particularly for women, Old Testament is a very rarely taken source of names in the Russian-speaking world. When you find people called things like Benjamin, Benjamin, Yeremei for Jeremiah, Samuel, David, more often than not these are people actually of practicing Jewish faith who have given the Jewish names to their family. In a similar way, of course, you will also find Islamic names given, Russia being about 17% Islamic, at least nominally Islamic nation. You will find more names in Russian coming from a classical background, which is not necessarily a biblical one. Natalia is a very common girl's name. It basically is Latin for Christmas, yeah? And the short form is the very well-known Natasha. Sergei, very well-known Russian man's name. Sergei come from Sergius in Latin, and the short form is Seryoja. Victor is my own name, is obviously of Latin origin, as is Tatiana. It's a very well-known girl's name, which actually has its origins in a Latin family name, and the short form of this is Tanya. So in addition to that, you could find occasionally Vitali and Raman, which also come from the Latin background. More commonly still, you will find the Greek names in Russian. There is a strong link between Greek and Russian. Certainly that is stronger than between Latin and Russian. And so you will find Evgenii, Eugene is obviously a well-known Greek root meaning well-born, and the short form is Genia, not to be confused with Gena, which is a short form of Gennady, which I think is possibly also a Greek name, but I am not sure about that. And you will find names like Sophia, meaning wisdom, Sophie. The short form is Sonia, and of course you will notice that a number of these names are much more well known as Russian names in the West with their short form, and often they are being given to people in the West, and people are walking around with Russian names in the West. My name is Sonia, my name is Tanya, my name is Natasha, my name is Sasha, maybe even from Alexander is also a Greek name, and the short form is Sasha. Some people don't even know it's a boy's name and give it to girls. And you say, oh, if you are a Russian person, you look at this person and you say, Natalia. And you say, no, I'm not Natalia, I'm Natasha. Well, in Russian that wouldn't be possible, because you are only called Natasha because your name is Natalia on your birthday certificate, and Natasha is the short form. Why? Because there was a saint called Natalia, but there was no saint called Natasha. That's just the short form of it. That's where it comes from. And in the olden days you wouldn't have been allowed to be called Natasha, and because every Russian knows that Natasha is only the short form of Natalia, if you want to call somebody Natasha, you put Natalia on their birthday certificate. And the same with Sonia. Nobody is called Sonia on their birthday certificate. On the birthday certificate you will see Sophia, and maybe this person by their friends is then called Sonia. Okay, but it is the version which is informal, which is more likely to have been adopted into the West and called a Russian name and put on people's birthday certificates in the way that it will not happen in Russia. So they are not exactly really true to form Russian names. They are actually diminutives of Russian names. These names like Sonia, Tanya, Natasha, and Sasha. Carrying on with the Greek names in Russian, you will find Dmitri is from the Greek Demetrius, and Dima is the short form. Yelena, the Greek Helen of Troy, gives you the short form Lena. Irina is Greek Irene, and the short form is Ira. Alexei, a man's name, gives you Lyosha. Alexander, like I say, give you Sasha. Yuri is George from Greek, although the form Georgi also exists. Yuri is more common, and Yura is the short form. Nikolai is Greek Nicholas, and it gives you Kolya. So these are names coming from a Greek root. There are also a few names of a Scandinavian origin. Olga, which give you Oля in the short form, is from the Helga in Scandinavian. You know that Vikings founded the Kiev Rus, the earliest Russian state. And Igor probably also comes from Ingvar, which is a Viking name. So Oleg, which gives you Alesha, also probably from this origin. So what is it then? Did all of the Russian names come from foreign roots? No, not at all. We're also going to look at a few Slavonic roots for Russian names. Boris is a very commonly known and famous Russian man's name. Borya is the short version of it. Lyudmila is a very nice name for a girl in Russian, from a Slavonic root meaning pleasant for people. And Luda is the short form of that name. Vyacheslav is almost unpronounceable for foreigners, common man's name in Russia, giving you Slava as the short form. Vladimir, very common, the name of Lenin, and of course of Putin as well, and their wives will have carried on calling them Volodya, the short form, long after the public certainly would not have dared to do so. Svetlana is a very lovely girl's name from Slavonic roots, referring to lightness, brightness, and Sveta is the short form of that. Also, in every in Russian, as in English, you have faith, hope, and charity in as girls' names, and in the Russian language, the name for faith is Vera, the name for hope is Nadezhda, and the short form for this is Nadia. Vera doesn't really have a short form, but if you hear Nadia, it comes from Nadezhda. And charity, which is love, is Lyubov. So you'll regularly hear Lyubov as a name in Russia as well. I think we probably didn't cover every single one of them, but probably most of the names of most Russian people just got basically accounted for. You know how to spell them now, you know the short forms of most of them. Be aware that in the olden days these names were given for saints, and people actually kept imeniny, which is the saints' days, instead of their birthdays, which is День рождения. On your actual birthday, which is your day you're born, you have, of course, to go, or you don't go along yourself, your parents do it for you, and you have to get a birthday certificate, which is свидетельство о рождении. And this is where you get your name put in. It takes a lot of times, a lot of careful writing in the corridor to get the thing written out, and then they put it all into the system and print you out for you a nice looking document on green paper with all hallmarks and watermarks on it, and much more impressive looking than the Western ones. And on it you must have your first name and also a patronymic. Every child born in Russia, even if he's born to foreign parents, is forced to have a patronymic. But I will talk about the patronymic more in a later lesson. Now quickly we will have a joke. Where did I put my joke? Ah yes, he's a Polish man. He goes to Ireland and he wants to have a job working manually. He can only work really manually in Ireland because he doesn't know the language that well, even though in fact he is a university professor back in Poland, but he doesn't make any money at it. So he has to go to Ireland to work on the building site. So he goes to the foreman, he says, please give me the job, working as a laborer on your site. I'm a university professor, but I need the money. And the man says, okay, well, we need to check. You know, you've obviously been working out your feet, you know, you can probably do the job, but we need to know that you have at least some basic general knowledge about our trade. Perhaps you can tell us, what is the difference between a joist and a girder? And the Polish guy say for a moment, the difference between joist and girder? That's easy. Joist wrote Ulysses and Goethe wrote Faust. It's the way I'm telling them. Okay, today's song is a version of the well-known song My Way, is sung in Russian. And this was sung, the lyrics here were written by Evgenii Petrosyan, a very well-known Russian comedian, and sang by him at the gala for his 60th birthday. I thought it was a very pleasant version of My Way. I'm singing these lyrics as well in a little tribute to Petrosyan. I'm not talking about myself in this song, but about Petrosyan, which he sang for himself at his 60th gala. But I want to sing it for you so that you can hear a Russian version of the famous song My Way, and maybe you will also start to understand a few of the words as well. I thought it was a very nice version. И вот я вновь смотрю на то лицо на старом фото, кого-то узнаю. Ах, как он молод, этот кто-то. И пусть он был таким робким, наивным, но упрямый, мечтою одержим, начал он мой путь. Мои учителя, я каждым именем гордился, в пути вели меня, и с ним я не заблудился, и был каждый мой час согрет теплом улыбок ваших и светом ваших глаз мой озарен путь, что мой успех сказать вперед. Это смех ваш порой до слез, но я боюсь такого дня. Остановлюсь, и нет меня, но я иду, и я люблю тернистый мой путь. Летят мои года, но я не скоро успокоюсь. Судьба была щедра, благословив мой вечный поиск. Мне есть чего желать, к вам выходя на эту сцену, смешить, не уставать, ведь это мой путь, что мой успех сказать всерьез. Это смех ваш порой до слез, но я боюсь такого дня. Остановлюсь, и нет меня, но я иду, я люблю счастливый свой путь. Да это мой